Hello, everyone. What's up? Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for waiting. I know some of you guys have been waiting for this since you guys were on YouTube for a while, but what's up? Let me rearrange my screen because it's not working as it should be. Maybe that's the way I want to do it. Yeah. Okay. What's up? Thanks for tuning in. I like to do these sessions from time to time, and I it's just we've been working with startups for so long. Like we started Slidebean 12 years ago, and there's just some basics, startup basics that I always want to talk about. I love live sessions because I get to see your questions live. So some of you guys are on a Zoom webinar. Thanks for tuning into that. Some of you guys are on the YouTube channel. Thanks for tuning into that. So I see the chat, I see your Zoom chats, and hopefully I'll be able to multitask my way through it. So let's do it. Okay. So the first thing I'll clarify is a lot of people think that I'm Slidebean. I'm not Slidebean. I'm Caya. I'm one of the founders, and I am the CEO at Slidebean. And what we do beyond the YouTube channel is for many, many years, we've been helping founders navigate the process of fundraising. We're not just a YouTube channel, in case you didn't know. And this session I like to call Raising Money Sucks, because raising money does suck. Like, honestly, it's probably my least favorite part of raising money. I'm sorry, of running a company. And there's just much in my camera. I'm sorry. Let's clean up. Sorry. Uh, and I think that the reason why it sucks for me is because you're essentially, this is your life's vision, right? You're working on this company, you're dedicating your life to it, many hard hours, and you have to go and pitch it to someone who most people will reject your company. Most of the investors you'll talk to will reject it. Like we did 500 starters, which is this accelerator in Silicon Valley, and one of the partners at 500 said to us early in the process that it's like you have to pitch 100 investors for every $500,000 that you want to raise, and that's in our case that was more or less true. We had to pitch around 100, I think it was 142 investors for our seed round, and the most of those guys said no, right? Most of those investors said no, and maybe they kind of got you all excited and followed up and made you waste a lot of time. And in the end, they said no. So like to me, it's a very painful process, and that's why I kind of want to talk about it, because a lot of you guys are probably stuck somewhere around in that process, and maybe that's the reason why you watch our content. But I think the most important part that you want to understand about funding is that funding, by all means, is just a means to an end, right? We spend so much time on this. It takes so much of our effort. It takes so much of our time. The pitch deck or the cap table or whatever, we've built a company around this whole pain of the process. But really, this fundraising process is really just a means to an end, right? The end of your company should be, the end game of your business is either selling the company or going public. And well, that kind of would lead you wondering, like, isn't profit kind of one of the objectives of building a business? And there's one key difference that you want to understand. So I built a couple of examples that maybe help explain this a little better. So let's take this example. Let's say that you're thinking of raising a $1 million funding round for your business, right? So probably the way you've imagined this round of funding is something like this, where you raise $1 million and you kind of give investors something in the range of 15%, right? Maybe this is the way you've maybe read about it on TechCrunch. This is the way you thought about this round of funding, right? 15%. So what does that mean? Well, it means that investors are going to get 15% of equity, right? And that means that, let's take an example. Let's say that your company makes it and goes to make $10 million in annual revenue, which is no small feat by any means, right? Huge company, $10 million in revenue. Okay, so for an investor, this deal where they have 15% of this company, well, how much money does it mean for them? A company of average company normally operates in an EBITDA margin or a net profit margin of around 10%. That's pretty standard, right? Profit margins larger than 10% are unusual. You have to be either very efficient or have a very minimal staff, right? So an EBITDA of 10% earnings before income taxes, depreciation, and amortization, that's what EBITDA means. 10% is usual, right? So after you take out taxes in the US, around 21%, this $10 million business is going to end up with around 800K left, right? Okay, great. Sounds great. $800,000 in profit. Now let's pay that to investors, right? Let's divide all this profit that the company made across everyone. So we end up with something like 120%, $120,000 for the investors based on the 15% of the company that they own. And on top of that, they will need to pay taxes, right? So there's an extra tax burden on top of it. So that means that in order to get back the $1 million that they invested, it's going to take at least 9 years. And that's why a lot of founders I see like are trying to pitch this round or trying to pitch the round to investors or trying to pitch this story. And the story often falls apart somewhere around there precisely because of that, right? Because you have this mismatch in how much equity the investors are getting against where the company is headed, right? A lot of us dream of building a company that's $10 million in revenue, right? But for the purposes of venture capital, that's usually not enough. So let me tell you a different story. Let's use another example. So this is example number two. Same idea, right? Example number two is a company that raised $1 million in funding. Investors get 15% of the company. And then what happens with this company is that it's going to need more investors, right? It's going to go and raise an extra round of funding. So like I'm just going to summarize it and say that these investors that originally had 15% of the company, because more investors came in, they got diluted and now they ended up with 12%. 12%, just an example. And so the difference is that because this company raised more money and because this company is spending much more aggressively, it's not going to get to $10 million. It's maybe going to get to $50 million. The company's not going to make any profit on that. It's probably going to lose money every year because they're expanding so aggressively. They're marketing so aggressively that they're not going to turn a profit. But they will get to $50 million in revenue rather quickly, right? If you spend that aggressively. So what happens then? Well, in this case, you could argue that this business that makes $50 million a year, that grew really fast, that has some tech component to it, maybe a larger company will want to buy it, right? Maybe they'll want to absorb it, implement the tech, or bring in some of the team. And realistically, and this is not a number that I made up, it's a decent standard around startups. Maybe that company is willing to pay, say, 5 times revenue to acquire this business. Not a crazy valuation, five times revenue if the company's growing, if it's exciting, if there's a good tech component, good IP, etc. So in that case, these investors would get 12% of that $250 million buyout in simple terms. So that looks like $30 million. So in about 7 years, these investors that invested $1 million made $30 million back. That's a 30x ROI in 7 years. That is the game that venture capital investors are on. And again, founders often forget about this and forget about that their business needs to expand this aggressively, needs to be on track to be sold, because that's the only quick way in which investors make their money back. If you don't want to sell your company, if you don't think that going public is your path, if you want to build a profitable business, fantastic. Except that it's not a venture backable business. It's not a business you can raise venture money for, because the payback on profits or only via profits would take too long. So that's the game of startups, and it's a super risky game. You require very, very fast growth. You're probably not going to have any profits for a while, or they're going to be a very, very thin margin. You're gonna need multiple rounds of funding, and you're on a path to an exit. It's the only way to realize this path of startups, and I think that creates a lot of confusion sometimes, because you kind of hear these stories of startups being a Ponzi scheme. We made a video like kind of comparing. They're not, right, by the way, but our startups are a Ponzi scheme because it's just pouring more money into them and they never turn a profit, and then they just go and sell it to somebody else. I think that that's an oversimplified way to see it, but it's kind of where that kind of line of thinking comes from. So let's talk a bit about funding. Let me give you some tips on how to approach funding rounds. Again, let's establish that funding is a means to an end. And again, the end is probably going to require multiple rounds of funding, right? So it's funding, and then potentially that exit. And so we've come up with a standard, not we, Slidebean, but we startup people have come up with a standard on what to call these rounds. Probably heard these: pre-seed, seed, Series A, Series B. Now, there's a lot of confusion about what each of these rounds mean and when your company can raise one round or the other. And that's, I think, the first thing that you want to make sure you clarify. Because a lot of people think that a seed round is this, right? That you launch, you build a product, you bootstrap it, I don't know, you build it in your garage, and then once the product is built, you go and uh, launch it. I hear that the video is lagging. Is it lagging for everybody else? I'm sorry. Um, Let me know. I can kind of reshare the screen or whatever. Looks kind of okay on YouTube, but we'll see. Okay. Um, Launch after seed. Not lagging for me. Okay. I'll be chill. Let's say it's okay. Okay. So a lot of people kind of think like, hey, I'm just gonna bootstrap this product and build it in my garage, launch it, and that's that. And that's when I can raise seed money. But that's not when you raise a seed round. You actually raise a seed round closer to something in the $20,000 in monthly revenue. And a lot of people misunderstand that a little bit. It's like when is the ideal time to raise a seed round? 20K in monthly revenue is, I think, a pretty good standard. But you have to make sure that you get to 20K in revenue. Actually, raising money right after you launch is a terrible moment to raise money because after you launch, investors have all this leverage. Slightly choppy. Okay, let's try. I'm gonna just do the regular screen share thing. Uh, no overlay, I think. Yeah, you'll see me small in the little screen thingy. I think that's how it's gonna look. But maybe it'll stop back. Sorry. Okay, cool. So launch. Yeah, a lot of people think that, hey, like if I launch, I'll be able to raise a seed round. But launching or raising a seed round right after launch is this, it puts you in a terrible position because first, raising a round of funding is a very long process. You should be prepared for 4 to 6 months to raise money. So let's say that an investor wants to, wants to invest. They see this company, they just launched. They know that the seed process can take up to 6 months, right? So they have time in their favor. This company just launched. What are they going to do? Well, they're just going to wait and see how it works, right? They're just going to wait for results. And it sort of puts you in a catch-22 situation because if you don't have a lot of money for growth, investors don't want to give you that money because they see that you've launched. So they expect you to have some revenue, some traction, some proof that this product works, that this company works. So I would, yeah. So like, biggest mistake companies make is they raise a pre-seed round, they spend it all to launch the product, and then they try to raise a seed round there. That happens later, and then every round of funding, very important, should always be a bridge to the next round of funding, right? So you shouldn't try to just raise money for months of runway, 18 months of runway, which is a common misconception. I have traumas from this because, in our story, we raised our seed round and everybody told me, hey, yeah, you should make your seed round last 18 months. Fantastic. But in reality, what your seed round needs to do is last until the next fundable milestone, not just the months, but until the next fundable milestone. By the way, most of this stuff I'm talking about is what I refer to as a standard tech company. A standard tech company, for the purposes of this slide, is a company that's working on a software product, maybe that they can build, they can bootstrap some MVP with, 2, 3 product people working, using some APIs, connecting to stuff that already exists, kind of like a SaaS, like a typical SaaS product, maybe some e-commerce, maybe some marketplace, like a typical standard SaaS tech company. There's another type of tech company, which I like to call the R&D tech company. That's a bit different, right? Think OpenAI, right? So this is a company that raised billions of dollars before having a product, right? Because they're building some big technology from scratch. Normally, an R&D tech company, hardware would be a good example of an R&D tech company. And normally these businesses, they require very specialized people, right? It's not, you can't just go and start an R&D tech company, assume that you'll raise $10 million to build it if you're not a scientist or a real expert in hardware or in AI or in large language models or biotech companies are often R&D tech companies because they have to go through clinical trials and stuff like that. So a lot of these rules don't apply to these companies. Disclaimer. But let's get back to the usual, which I assume most of you are working on, right? So each round of funding needs to be a bridge to the next one, right? So let's see what these bridges mean. Start with pre-seed to seed, right? So we established that launch happens between these rounds. So a pre-seed round is a round that you raise when the company has a fully formed team, founders with all the core skills needed to build this product, and a good established strategy to get your first 100 customers. Why? Because this money that you raise now needs to allow you to get to that goal, which is seed, right? And again, we established that seed is a launch product maybe something in the 20K revenue, 10% monthly growth. So the company needs to be growing month over month to prove that there's something exciting about it. It can't be just stuck with non-growing revenue. And good understanding of your growth metrics, understanding what drives revenue, what doesn't. Some common deal breakers of companies that are trying to raise a pre-seed round when they're not really a pre-seed company. Common deal breakers: trying to raise money to recruit your last co-founder. Big deal breaker, because you don't raise money to hire people. You don't raise money to find your co-founder. A lot of people kind of find this catch-22. It's like, oh, I am a non-tech founder. I'm a non-product founder. I'm trying to find a product founder. So I'm raising $500,000 to hire a developer. Big red flag, deal breaker, pitch. Why? Because first, this dream engineer that you're imagining, they're not going to quit their day job to go work for you. No, they won't. Like a two-person team, they're just not going to work for you. Engineers hate being managed by people who are not engineers. They ideally are looking for somebody that they can learn from rather than them be leading the company. You've kind of the way you phrase this, hey, I'm raising money to hire an engineer. That means that you're going to go and kind of hire them just to do your bidding. But that's not the way a co-founder relationship works, right? You're looking for somebody that brings their own ideas, that has some authority, that's going to build a product, right? And think about it, like if you're building a tech product, an app, a huge percentage of the success of this product is the product itself, not just the idea, right? So, a seed founder is going to struggle with giving their tech co-founder half sizable size of the company, probably 50% of the company. And I see them struggling. So, no, I want to give them just 1%. Who would take that deal, right? You have all these Reddit forums on engineers, kind of like, hey, like, what's the excuse that you use to tell your best friend that you're not going to work for them on their startups? It's a very common misconception. And to me, the way you approach that is you're not looking for a hire, you're looking for a partner. You're looking for somebody that already has an entrepreneurial spirit, that's looking to quit their day jobs because they want to start their own company. And you want to get together and together kind of brainstorm what this company might be. Maybe your idea helps. Maybe it's your idea, but maybe it's not. It's probably going to change. We are all wrong about our ideas until we put them in front of customers, right? So, I would assume that a lot of you guys are in pre-seed stage. So that's why I spend a little bit extra time talking about that slide. Let me know, by the way, if I've kind of given you what each of these round stages is. Do you want to kind of give me a little survey, you guys on YouTube? Just type if you're pre-seed or seed, Series A, based on this new assessment. Same for you guys on the Zoom. That way we'll see where we're talking to. Okay. Next bridge, right? So we've gotten to seed, product in the market, 20K revenue, 10% monthly growth, good understanding growth metrics. That's what you need to raise a seed. You go and raise it, and then that needs to be enough to get to Series A, right? So what's Series A? Oh, by the way, yeah, I was telling you, we got stuck here. This is where we got stuck. We raised our seed. We got to $1 million in annual run rate, but a Series A round, you actually raised that at around $2 million in annual run rate, at least for SaaS, software as a service. So we get stuck in the middle. We ran out of money, and we had to run to survive. Again, learn from my life traumas. But yeah, Series A, $2 million in annual run rate, some traits of product market fit. You understand your customers, a fantastic understanding of metrics. You know how your growth is coming, where your growth is coming from. Early in the process, you might hear founders saying, "Oh, we have 1,000 customers and we haven't spent a single dollar in marketing." I mean, that's cool, but it's also a double-edged sword, because if you haven't spent money in marketing, that means that you don't understand marketing. You maybe don't understand sales very well, because maybe you got lucky to get these customers. But at this point, you have to show that you didn't get lucky. You have to show that you really understand how you found these customers, and that you can repeat this process again and again and again with the extra money that you're going to raise. I see your surveys. Pre-seeds, some Series A, cool. Bootstrapped to seed. Bootstrapping to seed is cool. Just make sure you have enough money to do it. I hope my next company, I can bootstrap to seed. I see on Zoom, I see seed, pre-seed, Steve, seed, idea stage. That's fair. Okay, most of you guys are in pre-seed and seed, so I'm glad I spent a little bit extra time there. We'll have a bunch of time for questions. I think I'm halfway done through, more than halfway done through my slides, so we'll have plenty of time for questions. Good. Okay. Let's do one more. Let's do just one extra stage. Oh, red flags. Sorry, red flags on seed. a product has launched, but you have no revenue, you're not a seed company, right? You're earlier than that. You're raising money for 18 months of runway, not reaching Series A. Make sure that the money that you raise is enough. And that's where, forecasting becomes so crucial because if you don't understand how to forecast your revenue or your growth, um, you might run out of money before you get to the round that you need to raise. So uh, really important to like forecasting becomes more and more important as we move along this timeline. Let's do one more again. I know a couple of series. Some of you guys are Series A in the audience, and also, if we didn't raise the Series B, we didn't raise the Series A, sorry, but through Slidebean, we occasionally kind of get involved with companies, kind of help them narrow their story. So I've worked on a couple of pitch decks for Series A and Series B companies, so I understand a little bit of and that they raised successfully. I think the largest is this company called Upkeep. Um, I got involved with their pitch deck. They asked for some help on the pitch deck, and we did. I think they raised like a $36 million Series B, which is already I don't know what the valuation ended up being, but probably over 100 million at that point. But anyway, Series A, Series B. So Series A is a round that you raise, add $2 million in run rate, product market fit, etc. And a Series B round, what you need to get to is something in the $5 million in annual run rate. A senior executive team, you need to hire this with your Series A money, and early traits of your exit strategy. People debate about all the time about this exit strategy. Should you put that on your slide? At seed or a pre-seed stage, it doesn't really matter. Like it's so far off, it's so hard to find out like what the exit strategy might be that it's not worth talking too much about it. It's all speculation. But at Series B, it isn't, right? You need to start having some mapping of who are the companies that might buy the company, or are you just gonna go the long run and try to go public, right? Like that should be more evident now that you understand your market, your customers, your retention, your product market fit. Some red flags that would not allow you to raise the Series A: not enough revenue, you run out of money before reaching this milestone, or just not understanding your growth KPIs. Biggest issue. Like again, I get too many Series A companies that when I'm trying to learn about, hey, like what's your best acquisition channel? How much is your average cost per customer? What are your unit economics? What's your LTV to CAC ratio? We have a video about that, by the way. Just what a multiplier, your customer lifetime value, how much of a multiplier of your cost of acquisition is it? Ideally for SaaS, it should be about 3 times. And they don't know these numbers. And if a company doesn't know these numbers at Series A, that's a huge flag to investors. In my opinion, and in the Series A decks that I've been involved with, to me, the rule of thumb is prove that you really understand your metrics. Some metrics may be not great. That's fine. Like no company is perfect. You're still working on improving your churn or improving your conversion rate, but you have to know the metrics. Proving that you understand the metrics is, to me, the absolute key. Okay. Now we're gonna get to questions, but and again, just start throwing them do the Q&A thing on Zoom. Just throw them here in the live chat. 70 people live. Wow, it's crazy, man. I think it's the largest session so far. Yeah, so just throw the questions in the chat. I'll make sure to get to all of them. But first, a small commercial. This is kind of like a basic fundraising rounds little session, but we do a lot more deep dive sessions on our Startup Club channel, which has been booming this month, and it's already outdated on the number of subscribers. Yeah, so check it out. Also, YouTube channel, also hosted by yours truly. We have a budgeting webinar, not tomorrow, but Thursday, which is kind of like a deep dive into this whole forecasting, understanding your metrics thing. Also free for you guys on Zoom if you want to tune in. You'll find it on the Slidebean, on your Slidebean accounts. And for you guys on YouTube, just head out to the Startup Club channel. And yeah, we'll see. I think it's Thursday around same time. I think 11:30 Eastern. By the way, we're like maybe today is the day when we get to 600K YouTube subs. Like, I think we were like 40 subscribers short earlier this morning. Last I checked. We'll see if it happens during the live. It'd be really cool. Okay. So yeah, so last commercial before I get to questions. That's what we do, right? We help founders navigate fundraising. We're not just a YouTube channel. Slidebean is our product. It's free to sign up. You can sign up at slidebean.com. We have an AI pitch deck builder, an investor finder, so you don't have to kind of go find them on LinkedIn or Google, whatever. We have a cap table management tool. We have a financial model tool, and one of our subscription plans includes monthly 101s. So monthly 101s include a monthly session with our pitch deck team, a monthly session with our financials team, and a kickoff session with me where we can kind of talk about the company. I can answer more, one-on-one questions about the fundraising strategy, how to narrow the story of your company, etc. Happy to do that. I talk to, maybe 20, 30 companies every month. Just to kind of, I really love learning what you guys are working on. It keeps me up to date on what's going on in startups. Okay, now it's time for questions. Let me stop sharing this thing and we'll get to what you have. Okay. So I see you, Kuru. I'm kind of following a rule for the team to achieve goal. I'm kind of following a goal for the team to achieve 18 to 24 months since round. Our ARR needs to be at least match the previous round size. I prefer this over 3x, 2x, 2x. I mean, that's a nice rule. I don't know if the question is, will investors get on board with this rule? I don't, normally, I mean, I think the system works, but I don't know if the round size versus revenue amount is the right proportion. But yeah, I think it makes a little bit of sense. I don't know if I would turn it into a rule though. Okay. Sasti, how to get investor to invest in your company? Key things. I'd say rewind, rewind and watch some what I've gone through. But I think scalability is super key. I see a lot of companies that are trying to raise money. They don't really have a scalable product. I see a lot of copycat companies that don't really have a different edge. They're just trying to kind of adapt a business model to a new geo that isn't directly easy fundable. Um, you know, and and I think an idea that really not only scalable in the sense of it being tech, but scalable in the sense that there is a $100 million market opportunity for you. Because if there isn't, then that's the first thing that I think is going to have investors not be interested, right? Like, I think you read a lot about, hey, like you have to present this personality or like pitch in a certain way. In the end, it's a business transaction, and if the business isn't exciting or as exciting, then that's where investors might not be as interested. Yeah. Okay, I'll do one from Zoom. Peyton, what are some of the big key differences between the R&D fundraising and the standard fundraising? I'm in the pre-seed stage looking for research funding and grants. Love you, Slidebean. I had to read it. Yeah, I think the big difference with R&D is that it's a much riskier investment, right? R&D, right? If you're building, we did this video on robots last week. Biotech is a good example, right? So I know this guy that came up with this incredible new patented innovation for pancreatic cancer. So he came up with this in college, as he was getting his master's or his PhD, and then patented it, and now he's building a company around it. So that's the typical R&D company, right? There's some big innovation, some big tech that the founders are on the brink of have discovered or are on the brink of discovering, and the payoff, right, if they get it right, is hundreds of millions. And the only way this company can exist is if it raises money, right? Like this guy needs to go through, through 3 phases of clinical trials before this potential cancer treatment makes it to the market. And there's no other way, right? So the only way to do it is with funding, right? Again, oftentimes, your products are either not as innovative or they don't need as much money. So, founders' reply will be, well, just build it, right? Just bootstrap it, build it with your team, build it on your spare time, or do some work on the side so you can build an MVP, right? If an MVP is possible, then it's probably a product that qualifies more towards a standard tech company than an R&D tech company. If your MVP is not possible because you need hardware or like heavy machinery or very many years of research, think OpenAI, then yeah, that's your typical R&D company, which can get funding from grants or from investors too. Okay. I'm a VC advisor and I wanted to know what's the best way to help a founder who has a good SaaS product but doesn't have the development team they need to grow it. Find a development team. I made this bet on another video. This is on a Startup Club channel. I made this bet on like find me a company that there's no way to succeed if you don't have a tech team and you're trying to build a tech company. I bet that I'd get a tattoo if somebody could get me to kind of convince me otherwise, and nobody has convinced me. I think the only company they found like in the comments was Calendly, which was a company that early on outsourced their first MVP, which I would never recommend doing, by the way. But yeah, like it's like the only success scenario where this is a successful large SaaS company that was founded by non-tech founders and they had to outsource it. But every other company, if you look at the founder table, uh, there was one or at least two tech co-founders in it. Okay, let's go to YouTube questions. In the current AI world, is this fundraising path pivoting? No, I don't think so. No, I don't think so. Funding is happening, not as fast as it happened in 2020, 2021, where investors were kind of throwing money at companies, literally. It's not 2021 anymore, but exciting companies are still raising funding. You're starting to see kind of normality. This is today, I mean, today, 2025, I think that funding looks a lot like it looked pre-COVID, which to me is normal, right? That's just normal fundraising or market dynamics, or at least the normal that I've lived in the last 10 years. All right. Da, da, da. How to make I see your question on salaries, man, but I don't think it's one for the session. Godara. Just have the POC app, POC or the POC app. Is it a good idea to pitch VCs for pre-seed or how to give valuation for the pre-seed which doesn't have revenue yet? Yeah, like valuations, give you that example, $1 million, 15%. Like valuations at pre-seed are not based on revenue. They're kind of based on upside potential, right? Think of it like betting odds a little bit. Um, VCs don't tend to invest in pre-seed companies. Some do, but it's rare, right? Most VCs come at seed stage. So at pre-seed, you're probably looking at angel investors as your best path. And again, like we're working on this video. It's going to go live, I think, around Thursday. Maybe, yeah, I think around Thursday on how much equity do founders usually retain. Some of these slides I'm gonna incorporate into our next session. But how much equity do founders retain at the different funding stages? And funny enough, the median amount of equity that founders have at seed stage is 56%. So let me break this down for you. All founders all together, right? Maybe two, three founders, whatever, all together add total 56% of their companies on average for companies that raise a seed round. So, you have all these dream valuations where you raise $1 million for 15%. But in reality, like most of us will need to shed a lot of equity early on because that's the standard. Like don't use TechCrunch as a measure because a lot of the companies that get covered in tech, there's a lot of bias because a lot of the companies that are covered there are companies that have good connections that people want to talk about that are very exciting rounds. But there are a lot of not very exciting rounds that nobody talks about. And that's the norm, right? So don't kind of set yourself to that sometimes impossible goal of this very crazy valuation. Another one, how realistic is it to find investments at the product development stage for additional devs and entering the market? Where do I look for an investor? What are the most effective methods? Yeah, you look like a pre-seed, right? You're developing the product. You already additional devs you said, so I'm assuming that you have a tech team already, or some of you co-founders are tech people. You're looking to raise money to finish the product and launch. That's exactly what a pre-seed round is. Again, not a round that you normally raise with VCs. You probably want to raise that round with angels. A couple of VC funds like Hustle Fund is one that I know that I'm close with. They invest in, they're a VC fund that invests in really early companies, but they're very much an exception. Most VC funds will come in at seed. Let's see here, YouTube. How much time to reach money in bank account from angel investor? 6 months. Be ready for 6 months. If you decide to start raising money now, you go and build your pitch deck. Maybe you use Slidebean to build your pitch deck, not a commercial. And then you have your pitch deck ready tomorrow because Slidebean made it so efficient, and you start pitching investors tomorrow. Be ready for 6 months until the money hits your bank account. A lot of companies don't have that runway, and we get a lot of companies that it's like, hey, like I'm gonna run out of money in 2 months. I need a round of funding urgently. I'm like, no, you don't. It's not gonna happen. Like, don't assume that it'll happen. You need to cut your expenses now so that you can survive for 6 months and close the round. You can't assume that it's going to happen in less than 6 months. It's just what it is. Okay. Is it cool to work on copy SaaS ideas in different markets? I mean, it's cool. It's cool. It's not that venture backable. Because it depends on the company, right? If you, I don't, yeah, I would argue that if you're trying to build Amazon 2.0 for a market that doesn't have Amazon, your biggest risk is Amazon coming to your market, which they will eventually. So like many of those companies have their days counted, if you will. You see the occasional company that raises money, to just kind of build the tropicalized version of something that already exists. Tend to be smaller rounds, and the exit strategy tends to be, well, the bigger twin company just acquiring you. Yeah, not I mean, not that exciting to me, but yeah, that's a valid company. Again, with smaller expectations on funding. How much should I dilute myself for 500K? Again, this is the valuation question we were talking about. It really depends. Depends on the size of the business, depends on the market. Rounds of funding, pre-seed rounds of funding tend to end up with 25% of equity for the founders. And again, as I was saying, by the time you get to seed, founders will have shed on average 44% of the company in the pre-seed and the seed round. And again, the remaining, all founders together, all added up, end up with 56%. That's the average. Can I use Slidebean for monitoring interactions without necessarily having to create through Slidebean? Yes, sir. We have an investor CRM feature. So we have an investor finder, so you can kind of find investors in your space, filter them out. We kind of keep a constant web crawl of like who's actively investing in different markets, different stages. So you can find investors and track their conversations through Slidebean. Yep, we do that. Any chance Slidebean returns into a hyper-growth VC mode? Companies can have plateau moments or even bad years. That's a very fair question. I have thoughts on like hyper-growth VC mode. Like, I genuinely think that the only way to build a billion-dollar business is in hyper-growth VC mode. I genuinely believe that. There are examples that have bootstrapped to a billion-dollar valuation, probably, but it's very rare. So I do think that VC money is the only way to build that big of a company, and that's the company I would like to build one day. I generally don't think that Slidebean is that company, because we cater to you guys, startup founders, and at this early stage, we've started calling ourselves a fundraising OS, and fundraising is a thing that you need, that only a handful of people need, only a handful of businesses are venture backable. So like we understand that this is a product for a smaller market. So I eventually want to build that company. I don't know that it's Slidebean, and at least today we haven't found like a market opportunity that Slidebean, the current company, could tackle that would put us back in VC growth mode. But also, sorry to take so long to answer this question, but also I've kind of seen both ends of both sides of the coin now. Like I was in this VC hyper growth mode, and now looking back at that, like I can understand why it's different. Obviously, I've learned from many of my mistakes, but when you're running a company in VC hyper growth mode, you're always selling, right? You always peak closing is the motto, right? You're always kind of living this, I don't want to say facade, but this mask that you're in hyper growth, the company's in hyper growth, everybody's working crazy hours. Everybody has this upside. Your team, you have this upside. You have stock options for your employees, so everybody's kind of like working these crazy schedule to build something powerful. And I think that's the only way you can build it. But now that we've stopped being a hyper growth company and we're just a company, right? You get other perks, right? You get work-life balance. You get you get to go home at 5 or 6. So that's I appreciate this. We operated in hypergrowth, or at least attempting to do hypergrowth, for very long, and you can't do that forever, right? So like that's why startups, their success windows are so short, right? Because you can get away with really intensive, really painful work for 5 years, 7 years, but it can't last forever. Okay. So, what are the usual valuations for late stage pre-seed SaaS startups that you have seen? Late stage pre-seed. I don't know if there's such a thing as late stage pre-seed. There's pre-seed. I mean, if you haven't launched your pre-seed, yeah. So I don't know if there's such thing as late stage. Uh, maybe a good traction on the product. Still, right? And I think valuations also vary a lot from country to country. There's a rule, and it's going to be very counterintuitive, but there's this rule that a round of funding at pre-seed or at seed will tend to be about 20% of the company. That's the usual, about 20%, 15, 20%. No matter how much money you raise. So like this is the counterproductive part. So if you're in San Francisco, where everything's extremely expensive, uh, just to be able to live and eat and have a roof over your head, you'll need to pay yourself 100K or more. There's probably no way around it. And that means that if you raise money, to as pre-seed, you'll probably need to raise in the range of $1 million just to build this company here. And investors will understand the need to raise $1 million because you live in an expensive city. It has its perks. It has access to a network, etc. But they'll understand that you need this money, and they'll want 20% of the company for that. So that $1 million, 20%, that puts your valuation at 5 million. But in the other end of the spectrum, you're building a company in Latin America, for example. This is my own example, where things are a lot cheaper. You don't need to pay crazy salaries. You have access to cheaper talent. Or a big chunk of your team is not in a major city, right? It's maybe somewhere in the Midwest of the US. So you don't really need $1 million. You probably need 400K because you have to adapt pricing, right? Investors will still want 20% of the company for that round. And that puts your valuation at what, I don't know, 3 million or something. So the more you raise, the higher your valuation, as counterintuitive as that might be. But also that has to do with where you're based, and it has to do with your network, right? You can't go and say, oh, this is the first time I ever raise a pre-seed round, and I'm going to raise a $2 million pre-seed round, because it just can't happen, right? So there's only so much money that one founder can raise. I have seen $2 million pre-seed rounds. My good friend Devrim, we have a good video about this. Like Devrim founded a company called Superpeer, sold it to Skillshare. We have a video on the Startup Club channel about that. We can paste the link. And then yes, Devrim raised an actual $2 million pre-seed round, and then an $8 million seed round, which is crazy. This is in 2021. Again, Devrim is a second-time founder, so some special circumstances to that. Not impossible, but just raise what you can't raise is maybe the short answer. All right. Any incorporation service suggestion? I'd say First Base is probably what I like the most. We have a good relationship with them. Firstbase.io, I think. It's a good incorporation system, kind of built for founders. All right. How do investors generally view pitches from startups based in other countries, and what challenges might foreign founders face? Good question. It's very hard to raise money in a country that's not yours, or in a country where you're not based. So I see this a lot. There's a lot of money flowing in VC in the US, right? So all of these VCs are in the US. I'm just going to go to the US to raise money. But you can't just get away with that. It's not that you can just be in Greece and go raise money in the US. So you have to I think you need to have boots on the ground. There needs to be a reason why you're based there. Like I don't know if that's what you meant, Cora, but yeah, I'm Costa Rican. We started the company in Costa Rica. This is where we got together, started building our first MVP, but we did Startup Chile, which is this grant that you get. You have to go live in Chile for 6 months. We did that. And then we moved to New York for a few months, and then we moved to California for a few months. So and our company is a US company, our customers are in the US. So even though we lived in Costa Rica, or we're Costa Ricans, and our intention was to set up the largest office here in Costa Rica, there was always a team in New York when we were kind of in hyper growth mode. And company in the US, and most of our customers are in the US. So for many sorts and purposes, we were a US company, even though we still have a big team in Costa Rica. And I think that if we would have been full-time in the US, then we probably raising money would have been even a little easier than it was for us. Okay. Not many companies are able to get out of the VC raise and self-sustain after having a high burn model. Would be good if there's one more content how to save companies that fall out of the VC game. Man, that's such a great question. I want to talk a little bit about it because that's literally what happened to us. Again, I pitched my investors on hypergrowth. Um, Sorry, quick answer to K3. Do you need to be a registered company to raise pre-seed? Yes. This comes before you go to investors. You want to incorporate before. Normally. You want to kind of reduce barriers. So you want to have a C Corp already running, not an LLC, important, not an LLC. LLCs don't work for multiple rounds of funding. We have a video about that too. So to your question, yeah, like if you go to your investors and you tell them, hey, I'm going to be a hyper growth startup, and then you stop being one, and then their payback is not the exit for a multiplier, but maybe profits over the course of many years, that's a shitty deal for investors, right? I mean, the worst possible deal is if your company goes out of business, they lose their money. But this is honestly close, right? Because I mean, they have their money, but it's parked. They can't get it out. There's no clear path for this company to exit. So they funded this company and the money is parked. And this is the reality. I mean, I understand. I have investors in that situation, and I understand that that's their reality. So in my case, we raised, I think total amount of money raised was about $1 million that we raised. So we're a much bigger company than $1 million company. And so it doesn't feel like their money is lost, but it is parked, and it's not clear when the company will either pay it back to them or be sold so that they can get it back. And it's not clear what the multiplier is going to be. And that round, not a secret. If you go to Crunchbase, you'll know, that was raised in what, 2016, 2017. So it's going to be 10 years now. So it's not a great deal for investors. That's just the reality of it. I think we got a little lucky because Slidebean is still a relevant brand despite being through multiple rounds of innovation, AI, COVID, right? Like we're still around, so I think that's valuable. And honestly, I think in part because we didn't raise that much money. I know of a couple companies, like can't say which, but I know of a couple companies that raised, large Series A rounds, 10, 12 million, got to a certain amount of ARR, maybe 5 million in ARR, and they plateaued there, right? So that's a really, really bad deal for investors because they don't, like, my investors have total $1 million parked in the company. In each of the checks was, I think the largest checks are 150K. So I mean it's money, but it's not that much money, right? But when you have investors that have $4 million parked in a single company, that company's not growing, there's no path to exit, they're going to be much more insisting in getting that money back, right? The pressure is going to be on you. So it's not easy. Like, I would never start a company if my intention is to and raise money if my intention is to convert to a profitable business. It's very much two different paths. Like, again, we survived by moving paths and got lucky that our investors were chill about it, but most companies won't be able to do it. And even if they do it, you're going to end up with unhappy investors. So yeah, if you want to build a profitable business, don't raise money. That's oversimplification, but I think you get it. Okay. How would you get connected before you intend to raise? I have to stop at the hour, guys, but I'll answer as many questions as you guys send me. How would you get connected to investors before you intend to raise funding? How would you naturally get them to know you and your company? That's a good question. You want to network early. You want to be kind of part of communities. Luma is great now. lu.ma is great now. Just to find events and stuff around your city. Just be part of that. Go to events, go to conferences. That's, you have to build a network. It's hard to raise money if you don't have a network. I get this question sometimes, which is, I don't have a network. I don't live in a major city. I don't know a single investor. How can I get introductions? And the truth is, I'll go back to what I said earlier. It's like you need to pitch 100 investors for every $500,000 that you want to raise. It's true. Pete Sullivan, he's the founder of this company called Jack Pocket, sold to DraftKings recently, and I shared an office with him in another life, earlier company. Man, Pete was always fundraising when he was on Jackpot. Every single time I met him, it's like, oh, I have to fly to San Francisco because I'm fundraising because I have to investor meetings. It's like, but what didn't you just close the Series C? It's like, yeah, but I'm already raising my Series D. And that's kind of the truth, man. Like you're always fundraising. That's it. It's definitely, in hindsight, as a CEO, I should have spent much more time fundraising than I did, because you have to do it all the time. But if you don't have that network to begin with, um, it's going to be a lot harder, which is in turn going to be a risk that other investors will see. It's like, hey, this guy doesn't really have a network other than me he got this email through a cold email. So that's a risk for the business. So you want to build that network as early as possible. Um, Honestly, sometimes you kind of go to these events and you don't see a you pay $1,000 for a conference ticket and you don't get the value right away. But then 2 years later, you have this person that you met and that you kept in touch with, and they're the gateway to that intro or to that round. So that happens. You just have to cultivate those relationships. And sorry, the last point is, like, if you're a complete outsider to the startup world, accelerators are not a bad idea. Like Techstars now has a lot of chapters and they do it remote. I did 500 startups. And I did Dream It too. And to me, these accelerators were very much a bridge to, as a Costa Rican with no investor connections, these accelerators were very much a bridge to, hey, like, now I at least have some form of a network. And you kind of fast tracks you to building that network, even though it costs you a little bit of equity. All right. Have you observed regarding methods of maximizing effectiveness from a pitch deck to closing a round? Cold email acquaintances, warm intros. I would even completely discard cold emails. Just go with warm intros. They're almost useless, cold emails. Not completely, but almost. I have a deck and I'm prototyping stage and I get it and I get POCs on contacts. How long will it take to get investor grant? 6 months, man. 6 months. If you haven't pitched anybody if you haven't pitched anybody yet, 6 months if you start today. I know it's painful. It sucks, but that's just how long it takes, man. All right. What about as a founder sitting on a company that you feel is not going to scale and only realize that later, and the opportunity loss of starting something else? That's also true, man. Like, that's such a good question. Maybe the last question of the day. There's only so many companies that we can build as founders, right? Some of us have the itch to build stuff. And there's only so many companies that we can build. And every moment that you're sitting in a company that's not going anywhere, you know that you're spending that opportunity cost, right? Because there's only, if an average startup takes 10 years to succeed, or let's say 7 to 10 years to succeed or exit, right? How many can you build in your lifetime? It's probably like 4. That's it, only 4. So like you have to, you have to pick, you have to pick and choose sometimes, and I think that's fair. Like in outside the US, sorry, in the US, failing is very normal, at least in the startup world. Like, oh, you failed a company, all right, fine, you learned a lot. Let's do it. Let's do it again, right? And that I don't think that that's going to be a barrier to raising money again. I I haven't seen it as a barrier. My friend Pete, again, Jack Pocket, like his company, like I don't know if he'll start another one, probably, but again, Jack Pocket sold to DraftKings, probably $100 million plus acquisition. I don't know what it was. Um, this was just in the time that I've known him, which was since 2011. So what, 15 years, 14 years? He started like 3 or 4 businesses. Um, they all failed, all the other 3. But that's just like the way he lives his life. But 4 times the charm, and the more chances, the more companies you start, the more chances. You can't do 2 companies at once. Important. So you kind of have to always be deciding on that. And ideally, you want to either find a soft landing or an exit for your company, even if it's not working. Like, there's value that was created, but also, if your company is really, really struggling and you're just kind of like making ends meet to make it survive, then consider letting go. Like, that's not wrong. In the US, like culturally, in Latin America at least, that's not the way it works. But yeah, and I think that culturally a lot of stuff in the US doesn't work. But this is one thing that we can learn from them, I think. Okay. Your thoughts on working on your startup on the spare time, but needing to fundraise. Should I leave my other company? I've been working on startup more than full time, but I will start fundraising. Yeah, like to close around, you probably need to be full time, or very, very ready to full time. Um, I mean, if you have to pay your bills, you can keep your day job, but it should be, you should be very much ready to quit or quit the moment you kind of see a sign of traction. Like I was watching this early Y Combinator presentation the other day, and yeah, like one of the kind of requirements, I don't think that that's a full-on requirement, but one of the requirements was founders have about a year worth of savings to survive, right? And I think that that's not crazy, right? Like just having this expectation that, if you invest in a company and the founders are living paycheck to paycheck, that's also a risk to the business, right? Because maybe you need to bridge 1 or 2 months, and if you don't have any money, uh, then that's very risky. Um, you know, that's why starting companies out of college is challenging, like unless your parents are rich. But it's challenging because you don't have like a safety net, you don't have any savings, right? Like as there's this good infographic, I can't remember where I saw it, where like the most successful companies are generally started by people in their 40s ish, which kind of makes sense because there's experience, they probably worked somewhere else, maybe started other companies before, they've managed larger teams and they have some money, right? They have some safety net, and they have, they at least can bootstrap part of that. One good rule I created for myself is that whenever I start a next company, I will never spend more than 10% of my net worth in building it, right? Or investing in it. Uh, why? Because of that. My first company, when we closed it, I did that. I spent money that I shouldn't have, and I ended up with debt. Like when the company closed and died, we not only didn't raise money, but I was left like in the hole for like $20,000, which sucked because I had to pay that credit card back. So I will never do that again. Please don't make that mistake. All righty, guys, we have like 4 minutes left, so maybe it's time to wrap it up. Again, thanks a lot for tuning in. We do these about once a month. I have a new topic that I want to talk about in the main channel, so make sure you hit subscribe. We want to do yeah, like make sure to follow the Slidebean Startup Club channel. It's kind of like a deep dive of what we've done today, probably more eloquent than I have been live. So a bunch of videos coming up there. The kind of like the study on founder equity and how much equity founders retain. That one's coming this week. And again, new webinar coming on Thursday on how to forecast, how do you understand your metrics as you forecast these funding rounds. So much more advanced than what we covered today. But we'll actually build a financial model for one or two of the companies in the audience. So if you join to the Zoom session, you'll get some of that. Again, thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in.